This is The KJ Show. The KJ Show with host Dr. Katherine Johnson is a mix of breaking news and practical advice on the many ways in which the energy industry can affect you and your family. Katherine will combine energy updates and conversations with leaders in the energy efficiency community. So please welcome your host, Dr. KJ.
Hello, and welcome to the KJ Show. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host on the KJ Show with me, Dr. KJ, on my new YouTube channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I was inspired this weekend because I went to Savannah, Georgia, which I'll be talking about later, and I saw this beautiful old lighthouse. And I'm thinking, lighthouses, wow. And of course, every place I go, I always find out where all the energy stuff is. So I am going to be talking about lighthouses today and lights and lighting advances and how lighthouses have become a metaphor for industrial evolution. But meanwhile, I always like to start out with something fun and the breaking news that you can't make up. It's getting sillier. In fact, they now have a war. The war continues on dogs and cats. Mother Jones, which is a really radical, left-wing, radical, bizarro newspaper, wrote an article quoting a study from Australia about how bad pets are for the planet, especially dogs and cats. Now, I've written about this on my Substack, but apparently the villains really continue. The author, Diana Liu, typed out that she thought that the dogs have extensive and multifarious environmental impacts. What sort? Really? Dogs? Cats? It's because they eat meat. So this research was done out of Australia, where apparently they have nothing better to spend money on. God forbid, defenses, right? And they said basically they wanted to study, the environmental impacts of, say, your beagle, your German Shepherd. And what they found out was that domestic dogs are more insidious in terms of climate emissions, and that may be even more dangerous in some countries. And that's because they eat meat. And the pet industry is the 60th largest, worst polluting. If it was a country, the emissions from the pet industry would be the 60th largest polluting country. So I'm thinking to myself, dogs, really? What about all the psychic benefits that dogs provide? What about the fact that dogs can help us with people who are disabled or people who have anxiety issues or veterans returning from bad experiences? Plus, dogs are just pretty cool. So anyway, this study another study was published in the Journal of Close One, reported that a country that is made up of just cats and dogs would rank 5th in meat consumption. Well, duh. And then that's a significant impact on the climate. Now, remember, the climate people have been trying to tell us that we needed to eat bugs and not meat, even though we found out that one, climate change doesn't really exist, and two, cows are actually really important for the environment because they can actually regenerate the soil through stomping down the dirt. And bison are very effective too. So this whole notion that eating meat is bad is another falsehood perpetuated by the really weird left. So what they basically said, this study was done by Jeffrey Oken, researched the environmental impacts of America's pets and found out that dogs and cats, I have a graph on this, in the United States create 64 million tons of carbon dioxide and methane, equivalent to 13 million cars per year. Oh my goodness, what are we going to do about Fido and Fluffy? Orkin said that the pets consume 19% of the number of calories, the same as in France, but I'm pretty sure French meat's better. I know it is. And also the equivalent of the number of, and that pets also if they make their own country, they'd rank 5th in meat consumption. Well, that's because that's what they eat. You can try and tell your pet to be a vegan, but it really isn't the best diet for a dog or a cat. They're designed to be omnivores. So pets are responsible also for leaving all kinds of pollution with their waste. But the point is, we have all these things going on in the world. We have wars. We have rumors of wars. We are busy debating whether or not we should do what we're going to do about Greenland. We have economic instability. We have rioting in the streets, and people are worried about your dogs and cats. Please get a life. I love my dogs. I don't care that they are climate villains because in my mind, they're not. They're climate heroes. They make me feel good. Another really funny thing is this is a picture of Chris Wright, the energy secretary. Now, he is actually probably the most qualified energy secretary we've had in recent memory, certainly in the last 10 years or so, because he's actually, guess what? An oil executive, and he knows about fracking and he knows about fossil fuels, which is why, of course, the media hates him and the climate change people hate them. But he's basically saying that, two things. One is blocking wind farms is actually a good idea because the electricity is really expensive, and he said that he's basically defended the Trump's administration to block $6 billion of wind farms off Rhode Island. They're now just still debating whether or not some of those wind farms are going to be under construction again. It's still kind of up in the air, literally and figuratively. But basically, he says that the offshore wind farm, increases electric prices, and and it also eliminates jobs. I don't know quite how that works, but the point is he's against wind power. And frankly, it's not reliable and it's really expensive. And if you really care about the environment, wind power is not good for the environment. Just ask the whales and the manatees and the seagulls and all the birds that get killed by the turbines. So, of course, energy critics think that he's just saying this because he's a fracking guy and he wants to protect fossil fuels, which makes sense. He is a former gas and oil executive. But he also said that, he said the focus of the United States to transition away from fossil fuels has hurt the country. Couldn't agree more. And that he will encourage countries to buy more liquefied natural gas, which is, of course, what he produces. He also said, and this is what really caught my eye, is that he thought that the 2015 Paris Agreement, the climate change accord, that we're all going to be dead by 1.5 degrees Celsius rise. Hopefully, they're saying by 2050, I probably won't be here, but maybe 2040. In other words, no one really knows. And we won't know when it happens until 20 years after it happens. So the point is, he said nearly every country who pledged to reduce greenhouse gases is silly. Climate change, for impacting the quality of your life, Mr. Wright said, is not incredibly important. In fact, if it wasn't in the news, in the media, you wouldn't know. Couldn't agree more. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host. You're watching The KJ Show with me, Dr. Katherine Johnson, and I'll be right back.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals.
And welcome back to the KJ Show. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host on my new YouTube channel. Thanks so much for tuning in. Today, my theme is I Saw the Light, which is a pun and a metaphor for the show's themes. And we're going to talk about lighthouses. And actually, they have something to do with energy efficiency. Don't you worry, I'll tie it back in, along with lighting advancements. And lighthouses is a metaphor for industrial evolution. So first of all, the reason I was inspired by the lighthouses is because I went this weekend to visit with my daughter in Savannah, Georgia, and we saw a beautiful old lighthouse. Now, I lived in Maryland for many years, and there were lots of wonderful lighthouses, but I had no idea the real history of lighthouses. And of course, if I'm going to go see a lighthouse, I'm going to go learn all about it, right? So I think we have pictures of them too. So lighthouses have been around since, I didn't know this, since Pharos in Egypt in the 3rd century BCE. Wow, that's a long time ago. And they basically have always had these structures. Sometimes they weren't built up like this one, but they were actually evolved from simple bonfires on hillsides to sophisticated towers with lights and other navigational aids. Initially, they used wood or coal to serve as a light source. That was replaced eventually by candles, oil lamps, and electric lights. And guess what now? Energy efficient lighting, hence the theme. So the interesting thing is the traditional lighthouse is typically a tall tower made of brick or stone, and over the centuries, design really hasn't changed too much. They also have, I learned, they have not only do they have these big lights, but they also have their own day marks too. So every single sailor knows which lighthouse is. They know where they are when they see the lighthouse. The core components have basically been the same ever since it started. And in one of the first acts of the United States government, right after we became the United States government, was to create the lighthouse. The government assumed control of all of the lighthouses and the navigational aids across the country. There was about 12 existing lighthouses back in the 1780s, and now there may be more. But the government placed them under the Treasury Department in 79 to 1820, and the number of lighthouses went to 55. Unfortunately, the lighthouse service hasn't always been very well run, and that was another problem. Apparently, they had this auditor. His name was the 5th auditor of the Treasury, Stephen Pleasanton, who was very frugal and basically let all the lighthouses get into disrepair, which is atrocious and actually not very good, especially for the sailors and the cargo trips and all the people that rely on lighthouses to help them not crash into the shores. Due to his fiscal frugality and dedication to other responsibilities, his lack of maritime experience, why the heck did he get in charge of this? The lighthouse service suffered for 32 years when he was in charge. So finally, in 1851, years after complaints and protests by ships and navigators and chambers of commerce and the American Coast Guard Pilot magazine, Congress finally appointed a special board. And after that, they basically, did a study and found out that they needed to revamp the lighthouses. Makes sense, right? And so they did they had engineers and scientists, and Congress quickly compiled, and they created the U.S. Lighthouse Board, which again worked really well. And they established 331 lighthouses by this time. And then light ships, which were ships basically with big lights on them, and other navigational aids. The U.S. Lighthouse Board also made a lot of technological improvements, sort of foreshadowing improvements in lighting in general. One of the things they did was they installed the Fresnel lens, which is this really highly very visible light lens that actually was developed in France. And the lenses are composed of concentric circles of prisms, direct the light at a central bullseye where it's concentrated, and it's far brighter than any other contemporary. By the Civil War, all of the U.S. lighthouses had Fresnel lenses. The other interesting thing I learned when I was going through the tour at the Tybee Island Lighthouse was that they used to have to carry 40-gallon drums of fuel oil up 138 steps 3 times a day, which is why they had 3 lightkeepers, and to get to fuel the fire for the lighting when they were doing this in the turn of the century, so 19th century. So it was a arduous job, and fuel oil is not necessarily very environmentally friendly either. I do agree with the climate on that one. But other technological improvements included they got new light ships, buoys. They have better, better built, constructed lighthouses. They've all done all these different things. And the nice thing is that now, unfortunately, the lighthouses are being replaced. So a lot of the lighthouses in Chesapeake Bay have now become screw pile lighthouses, and the number of lighthouses dropped to 24 in 1889, but went up again when the development of steam power came back in. So the interesting thing is, by the important technical advances are, I know I'll tie it in, is electrification. Once they got to electrification, I think I have a picture of these lights, they were actually able to reduce the number of fuel oil they needed because the light bulbs were much better. I think, don't I have a picture of that? And the important technical advances are also electrification. Okay, and I'll talk about it next week, next section. And the powering by lights by electricity rather than oil meant fewer duties for the keepers, and also not quite as arduous, and fewer number of employees. So in 1939, the lighthouse service was transferred to the Coast Guard. Under the Coast Guard, the administration has now done the Lighthouse Automation and Modernization Program, ironically named LAMP, and that began in the 60s. By 1990, all the lighthouses in the country had been automated except for the Boston Light, which has been serving faithfully for 215 years. And then the most powerful light was in the Western Hemisphere is Sullivan Island Light in Charleston, South Carolina. It had originally had 28 million candle power candles, but the light was too dazzling, probably disturbed the residents of Charleston. So they actually lowered it down to 1.2 million, but it could still be seen 26 nautical miles or 30 miles away. So to me, when I was walking through, no, I did not go up the 139 steps on the Tybee Island Lighthouse. I also found out that the lighthouse was destroyed 3 different times in Savannah because of different wars, like the Civil War, or War Between the States, as they call it there. And also, I also found out that they had to move the lighthouse inland a little bit because of the storm. So lighthouses, not surprisingly, are located in places that have a lot of bad storms because they're located on these rocky cliffs and bluffs that make the ships need to avoid in not crashing into. What I also thought was interesting is I didn't realize that the Coast Guard had taken over the lighting. I mean, I just thought I never really thought about it, but it makes more sense for the Coast Guard to be in charge of the lighthouse than, say, lighthouses, rather than, say, some other agency who's too fiscally silly to realize that you need to maintain and upgrade and update these navigational aids. But I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host. You're watching the KJ Show with me, Dr. KJ, and I'll be right back with more interesting and fun facts. Stay tuned.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. Yeah, it feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Hello, and welcome back to the KJ Show with me, Dr. Katherine Johnson, on my new YouTube channel. Thanks for tuning in. And today I'm talking about a show titled I Saw the Light. And it was inspired by my visit to a Savannah lighthouse on Tybee Island. What this is a picture of what actually they were explaining how they went from the traditional lighting to the incandescent watt over to a quartz bulb, and now they're actually using LEDs. But of course, when I go on trips and vacations, I don't take pictures of normal stuff. I take pictures of things like LEDs and light bulbs and halogens, and you can see how much bigger the light, those incandescent bulbs did not last very long at all. And that's one of the other problems that you have to keep changing them, which is why they needed lighthouse keepers. But now we have LED lights. And so I took the opportunity to say, well, now I can talk about lighting as an energy efficiency opportunity. And first of all, residential lighting programs have been very successful, so successful that most utilities don't even rebate light bulbs anymore. We're talking LEDs. The CFLs were kind of met with mixed reactions, but the LEDs, which are very cool and do all kinds of wonderful things and last 7 years and are going to be all kind dimmable, they have all these different features that CFLs didn't have really taken over the market. And so LEDs is sort of what is now the new lighting source for pretty much all new buildings. And guess what? Also been installed in all the lighthouses we have. But this is a really interesting stat I found. There are more than 5 billion lights installed in the United States alone. I did a socket study. I did a lighting study once for a utility years ago, and I found out that the average number of lighting sockets at a home is 42, which is a lot. But that's about 1/5 of the total in the United States. We have more lighting sockets probably than anybody else in the world. And so this is what the LED market is going after. Now, the market penetration has really come through, and now we basically you'd be hard pressed to find the standard Edison bulb right like this one. It's hard to find one. I don't even know if you can. I don't think they're allowed to be sold anymore. Maybe with Trump he changed it, but I don't think so. So one of the interesting technologies in lighting, you can move to the next slide, is that the widespread use of okay, this is the really cool one. This is the halogen watt quartz halogen bulb that they're using. They say to current day, but actually in some lighthouses, they're using LEDs too. But that's a big bulb compared to the Edison bulb. So now the new theme, thank you, the new theme for this for lighting has become solid state lighting, where they're basically now accounts for up 40 to 45% of all the lighting in the United States, primarily in commercial business offices and manufacturing. But it basically will help lighting because you're using less energy. Guess what you're doing? You're reducing greenhouse gas emissions by up to 500 million per year and decreasing electric consumption by 44% by 2030. So I'll get there. So, but the forecast is also that now, and this is something I talk about I do in my world, in my business world, where you get people to switch from the traditional Thomas standard A light lamps that were invented by Thomas Edison in the 1900s, or you get to visit, or you swap out your LEDs, which looks like a bad Dairy Queen ice cream cone. People sometimes say, oh, well, wait a minute. Now I can use more electricity because it's cheaper. I might get better light and I don't have to use as much electricity. So they actually end up using more electricity. I call it the snapback effect. The official term is Jovan's paradox. So what this study that was written by a colleague of mine said that basically they were wondering if the solid state lighting systems could actually help offset the snapback or the fact that people will now turn on their lights more. Also, one of the studies I did in my career early on was to identify how many lights do you really need to install in your home to actually make a difference in your bill? The answer is not 42, it's 5. If you replace the 5 most commonly used light bulbs with LEDs, and you won't have to bother again for 7 or 10 years, you will actually save energy because those are the lights that are used the most. You don't have to put them in closets where, how often do you turn on a closet light? Once a day for 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds. Bathroom, depending on how many teenagers you have, I guess. But this was a study I did for a utility, and it was interesting. These people, we installed lighting in the whole house. Everybody got energy efficient light bulbs, but the really savings came from installing them in the kitchen and the lamps and the things that are used most commonly. So this is also another way to sort of affect the rebound effect. You don't have to do the whole house; just do it strategically and over time. You don't have to do it all at once either. So, but going back to the lighting, solid state lighting concept, which consists of sustainable smart lighting systems based on solid state lighting devices also is one way to reduce the snapback effect. And so now they think, and these lighting experts are now promoting this new slogan called the right light, basically meaning smart lighting, meaning you don't have to do everything. You just have to put the lights in the right places. And that'll actually help reduce the snapback effect because the light's where it's needed to be. But if it's energy efficient, don't need to use more electricity. And so the last 10 years has been a lot of changes in the lighting technologies, from solid state lighting to LEDs, other kinds of LEDs, laser diodes, and all these different types of new lighting technologies. In fact, it's become so complicated that residential customers, you can't get a rebate for a CFL or a light bulb anymore because the market's transformed. If you can go to Walmart and buy LEDs or Home Depot, you don't need to have a market transformation rebate program. Now, some utilities still do offer light bulbs, LEDs, to low-income customers as part of their helping them reduce their energy consumption. But even those are getting phased out too. So the point is that now the real emphasis has become how can we improve the overall quality of the lighting at a larger scale, like in offices and in buildings. So the solid state lighting move is where they're thinking they're going to go to. It's more of an integrated approach. It's basically technology that basically combines a bunch of LEDs together, but it works very effectively, and also reduces energy consumption, which of course then reduces greenhouse gas emissions. LED lighting has contributed to save almost 500 million tons of CO2 from entering our atmosphere because of the increased usage of LEDs. But one of the other things that's interesting is that the application efficiency is improved, the quality of light is improved. CFLs used to be really terrible and people didn't like them. No, you're going to do next. Put the solar thing next slide, next section, sorry, or two sections. Anyway, smart lighting has a principal function to produce it at any moment at the right light where it's needed and when it is necessary. And it basically adapts the quality and the quantity of the light. So it basically becomes the right light at the right moment. And it's kind of intuitive. It's sort of like AI for lighting. And smart lighting is part of the solution because they call it light up smart. Basically, you're using the lights when you need to use them. You don't need to use them all the time. And it's more affordable. And then you are actually contributing. So we're using technology even more effectively by making our lighting more strategic and making sure that we're using it correctly and we're not overlighting things. And it's sort of an interesting thing. Lighting is really complicated. I remember when I first came on in the industry, the LEDs were just something that we couldn't even get our minds around. And now they're so wonderful and ubiquitous and small and long lasting that they are kind of the right solution. The CFLs were an interim step, but LEDs are here to stay. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host. You're watching The KJ Show with me, Dr. KJ, and I'll be right back.
Mike Zorek, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zorek, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zorek has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk. Master of words, powerful player. What life-changing words can Dr. Janet Smith Warfield pull out of her magical toolbox that just might mysteriously open a door you never knew was there? A door to free yourself from fear forever. Transform your rage into right action. Release your guilt. Position you into a life of freedom, purpose, passion, power, and peace, all quite suddenly, unexpectedly, and almost miraculously, with no effort on your part. Join Dr. Janet on Dancing with Words, Dancing with Wisdom, as she and her guests show you how words map our experiences, immersing you in a sound bath that relaxes your muscles, opens your mind, and supports you in co-creating your extraordinary life.
Hello, and welcome back to the KJ Show with me, Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host on my new YouTube channel. Thanks so much for tuning in. And today's show is about lighthouses and other lighting advances. And it's called I See the Light. And it was inspired because I actually have been a fan of lighthouses for quite a while. So one of the things I found out when I was preparing for the show was that lighthouses actually continue to have a really important role in our economy and important role in our environmental challenges too. In fact, they said that lighthouses, even though we, have basically got rid of all the light keepers, they've now been sort of automated. Their positioning of lighthouses along the coastline makes them ideal platforms for scientific research and environmental monitoring. Lighthouses can host weather stations, tide gauges, and other sensors to collect valuable data on climate change, ecosystems, and sea level change. One of the things that's really interesting is that they actually are measuring now. Again, I don't think this is happening, but these guys are. They basically are using specialized instruments within the lighthouses to measure and monitor sea levels and temperatures. And does that relate to climate change or weather? That's a good debate. But the other interesting thing is modern lighthouses have also switched to, they still use, they went from the Fresnel lenses. Now they're doing LEDs, as I mentioned, and other optics that can replicate or exceed the light intensifying beam of lighthouses. And so the lighting technology is even getting even better for lighthouses and LEDs. And then lighthouses also have, some of them have the traditional lenses still, but that's more for the historic sites like the one I visited. The other thing is, this is a picture I took. Modern lighthouses are also being used to capture and renewable energy. These are solar panels at the lighthouse, which I thought was just ironic. And as my daughter knows, everywhere I go on vacation, I always find pictures of solar panels or water heaters or solar water heaters or things like that. I am not a regular tourist, but modern lighthouses are often powered by renewable energy and sources such as solar and wind. It's also advantageous because they're remote, off grid. I mean, if you've been to Lock Island or those they're really out there in the middle of nowhere. And renewable energy reduces the need for other types of fuel deliveries and makes it more sustainable. So even though the lighthouses are still not as, staffed by human beings, we can still use technologies to modernize and automate their functions. And we can also figure out a way to capture the solar energy to power them. So I thought that was really cool. They've also started using, and you can take the picture away. The other reasons that they've started using lighthouses, so lighthouses are now becoming multifunction buildings, which is absolutely wonderful. We should definitely figure out ways to redeploy or multiply our assets. They're already there. So now lighthouses are also used for research platforms for mounting equipment and collecting oceanic data, sensors and instruments. They can actually study, monitor ocean currents, marine biodiversity, ecosystem health, which also is very, very important. And this is another thing that we don't really understand is if we understand how the oceans are doing, and oceans don't really, they're never included in the climate models, by the way, but understanding how the marine life is affected is a very good use of lighthouses. They're also, and this is what I was interested in, was they also promote cultural heritage and tourism. I used to live in Maryland. We had some beautiful lighthouses up in Maryland, and the one in Tybee Island, Georgia, is also very pretty. But as navigation technology advances, we don't need lighthouses as many, especially the old ones. So a lot of them are going out of business, but they're being shut down, but they're being converted into practical functions. They're actually being used as tourist sites. In the Outer Banks in North Carolina, there are like 4 or 5 lighthouses. Charleston has a lighthouse, and there's basically a tour stop, which is what I went to go see. There's also lighthouses are preserved as historical monuments, paying homage to the maritime history and the advances in navigation and engineering. This particular lighthouse also included a history of the lighthouse industry, and also talked about, we actually got to see how the lighthouse keepers lived and how they had to grow their own gardens and the kind of the life they led. It was very, very remote. And women were actually this is the first job the government actually allowed women to do, and paid them pretty well. So, and the other thing is, this is an interesting, I don't know if I'm ever going to be brave enough to try this, but one of the other things is that apparently decommissioned lighthouses are now a new Airbnb. You can actually stay in them overnight, in unique accommodations. Lighthouses offer a way to experience the charm and solitude. Well, that's one way of a life spent at sea edge. Ecotourism is associated as guided tours, bird watching, whale watching, all these different things. So lighthouses have basically become an essential part of our overall history. And as we're getting ready to celebrate by the 250th anniversary of the United States, it's interesting to know that some of our lighthouses actually predated even our country. They were back in the 1730s. They were being built by the British. And lighthouses were also in Georgia, and in this one especially was destroyed during the war between the states, or the Civil War. The Confederates lost control of it, and the Union forces. Of course, they didn't say Confederates at the museum; they said the rebel forces. But anyway, the Confederate the lighthouses, for their navigational importance, were actually controlled in Georgia by the Union troops, which of course was a challenge too. So overall, I need a time check. Overall, I think lighthouses were really an interesting part of our past, and I'm a big fan of maritime anything. So I just thought it would be kind of fun to talk about something that I never really connected lighthouses with energy efficiency, but the fact that they're using LEDs makes it a logical collection. What's the time? Oh, okay. The other interesting thing that I learned when I was at Savannah this weekend was how just vibrant, and I'll talk about that in a little bit later. But the lighthouses, I visited lighthouses in Hilton Head and in Charleston, and also in the Chesapeake Bay and up in Maine. There's some beautiful lighthouses, and they really are kind of a window into the past. We got to walk through what the lighthouse keepers lived on, how they help each other. In fact, they all got together and band together to kill a 13-foot snake one night. That wasn't recorded in their journal in the 1800s. So this was an interesting community, and one that we don't really know too much about in mainstream world. But I just thought it'd be a nice shout out to lighthouses. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host. You're watching me on the KJ Show, and I'll be right back.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness: Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality? But it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating. Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like, it was almost instant. Like, I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Hello, and welcome back to the KJ Show with me, your host, Dr. Katherine Johnson, aka Dr. KJ. And today I'm talking about lighthouses not only as a as a beacon, and certainly a beacon of hope and safety and security that lighthouses provided all those years. It's also become a metaphor for companies that are embracing the transformational technologies at a faster clip. And ironically, this notion of lighthouses was created by the World Economic Forum, yes, in Davos, Switzerland, where the president is right now, and McKinsey Consulting. And I'm thinking, well, that's an interesting idea. So, what I never really thought about this, but basically, according to McKinsey and the World Economic Forum, in we're in the middle of a fourth industrial revolution. Okay. And it's basically accelerating a combination of forces that are basically just, it's a fancy way of saying we're having a lot of disruptive technologies. We're learning all these new things and we're at a rapid pace, and a lot of companies just can't keep up with it, especially with AI. So amid all these challenges though of trying to integrate all these new technologies and trying to figure out how to make things work more efficiently, the World Economic Forum began this global lighthouse network, which is the picture. That's the picture of the globe you want to show. I'll talk. You want to see it? Yes. So I don't expect you to read it, but what this is actually a really interesting assessment of where the companies are in the world, where the leading companies are located, and where the new companies are located. So basically, McKinsey and the World Economic Forum found a way to identify what these quote lighthouse companies are, where they're located and around the world. And you notice they're not all in the United States. And in fact, if you notice, a lot of them are in other countries and other continents, which I thought was fascinating. And we're not just looking at Europe, we're also looking at Asia and even a little in Africa. Looks like maybe where Morocco is. And so the point is that these lighthouse companies, as McKinsey describes them, are an inspiring group of organizations. Okay, you can take that away. That exhibit essential characteristics in the fourth industrial revolution. Lighthouses show the way, as they use the metaphor, amid these challenges, demonstrating how to be digitally influenced and the operations through, and they gain all kinds of productivity gains at technology at scale. Basically, these are the companies that have figured out how to outpace the speed of innovation. They're creating new revenue streams. They're using flexible production systems. They're basically doing a better job of going to market, meeting customer demand, understanding customer demand, being able to pivot to meet customer demand, and that lighthouses are actually driving the business model innovation. And that is why they're considered lighthouse organizations. And these are companies that you've heard of. A lot of the big engineering firms are lighthouses of innovation. And they have some examples here of a case study that was done. And to sort of just expect, go ahead and put up the one with Johnson and Johnson. Yes. Now this is a really interesting case study, and they have a lot of these case studies at the site where I found this. It's on there. If you go to Lighthouse Technologies, you'll find them. You'll find the report. But in an effort, so this have a lot of different ways in which these kinds of lighthouse companies like Johnson and Johnson are using technologies to not only improve their business operations but enhance their revenues and basically do a better job delivering whatever products and services they need without creating additional waste or additional energy consumption. See, you knew I'd tie it back to energy efficiency. In an effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, an environmental footprint of, according to the hospitals, the largest self-care plants, Johnson and Johnson Health, created a targeted um, fourth generation hospital, basically a building where, if you look at it, they basically had incorporated all of these technological innovations, which actually ended up reducing their their energy usage by 25%, also reduced the 500,000, they removed 5,000 tons of CO2, and they didn't have any particular waste with it. So because Johnson and Johnson took a holistic integrated approach to find out how can we integrate these technologies in our hospital, and how can we combine it with sustainability, how can we combine it with energy efficiency, how can we combine it with all the new technologies that we need, they developed this wonderful example of a lighthouse organization. Another one that I wanted to show you is this one, and this slide really does do a great job of explaining how lighthouses are actually in the manufacturing site. They basically look at all the different ways in which lighthouses can affect our lighthouse organizations, use and incorporate this kind of technology into all their operations. They've been using it in digital assembly machines, using robots and other types of mechanical improvements. They also have digital maintenance, which is really interesting, digital performance management, digital quality management, which is really critical for products and services, and also digitally enabled sustainability. And this is just one example of the ways in which McKinsey and World Economic Forum have identified companies like Johnson and Johnson, companies like the big surprise, big lighting manufacturers, companies that are big manufacturing like Siemens have actually been able to integrate and sort of demonstrate the path forward. And I thought that was a really interesting notion to have. I had never really thought about lighthouses, but according to McKinsey and World Economic Forum, these companies are literally lighting the way and showing other companies, smaller companies, how in the world, how to actually make these adaptations, how to keep pace with the speed of change, which is a real challenge. And a lot of little companies maybe can't keep up, but they can take some of the lessons learned from the bigger ones and use it in their own, incorporate it into their own plants and manufacturing. These things include like maybe repurposing existing plants and making them more energy efficient. This is what Bill Gates wants to do with the nuclear power plant at 3 Mile Island. He wants to get it back up and running and make it even more modern and sophisticated and safe, and use energy technologies and better monitoring and systems, better quality control, better safety. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot more sense than trying to build a nuclear power plant from scratch, which is very expensive. And they're doing that in Japan for the first time. But the interesting thing, I had never really thought about lighthouses as a metaphor for industrial technology and advancement, but it is. And it was an interesting notion. And I'm like, boy, no wonder McKinsey is considered a great consulting company, because that is a really great metaphor for how companies can, you can learn from each other. And this is something that I think MBA programs are called it design thinking, where they're basically saying, how can you integrate all these different moving parts into a holistic approach that actually helps the company at all levels. You're not just focusing on marketing. You're not just focusing on sales. You're not just focusing on production. You're using it all together. And now we have technologies like energy efficient lighting, energy efficient monitoring. We can control our lights. We can do demand response programs. There's all these different ways that we can use energy more effectively, which again is a benefit. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host. You're watching The KJ Show with me on my YouTube channel, and I'll be right back.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery, or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation.
Hello and welcome back. Well, that's my Tybee Lighthouse. Hello and welcome back to the KJ Show. I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host. And today I'm talking about I See the Light, and I've talked about lighthouses and lighting advances and lighthouse as a metaphor for technological innovation. So the first picture I want to show you is the lighthouse at Tybee Island that I had visited over the weekend. Again, there's 139 steps. I did not go all the way up there and climb. And I've been to other lighthouses, so I know the top of a lighthouse looks like. But this is the third version of this lighthouse that had survived many other, multiple storms, and then there was a war and reconstruction and all that good stuff. But it's no longer a working lighthouse, but it was a very interesting place. And as I pointed out, lighthouses are very good historic tourist attractions, and they have a lot of them in Carolinas and in Maryland and in Maine, and they're just beautiful. So the next thing I want to talk about was what I saw in Savannah. Why would you use oh, you know what they did? John asks, you can put Lighthouse back up. The reason they used black paint was they had what they called, these are day marks. So basically, every lighthouse has its own unique color pattern. And this was the color pattern for Tybee Island. So would, uh, um, even the ships would be able to see in the daytime, oh, that's Tybee Island, and use it for navigation. So it's black and white. The black is for, in the way it is visible during the day. You don't see the colors at night, but it's a way to identify the lighting. Hope that helped, John. And it was 179 steps. I didn't want to go. I'm getting too old. Anyway, back to Savannah. So the other thing I didn't realize when I went to Savannah, because I'd been there a couple times, maybe younger, with my parents. I'm a big antique buff, so I love old Southern cities. And Savannah is a beautiful old Southern city. What I hadn't realized is, and wish I had known this because I would have gone there, is that they have now converted a power plant into a restaurant and museum. I'm like, I didn't know about that till I was leaving the last day. And I'm like, no, wait, I could have had dinner in a power plant. That would have been, I could have written it off as research. But anyway, so energy is very, very, it's a very interesting idea. And you can actually eat in the smokestack of the restaurant, which I don't know if I would want to do that or not, but it's pretty cool. So I thought, as my family tells me, everywhere I go, energy is everywhere I go. So I can never be over it. I can never get like I take pictures of the solar PV cells at the lighthouse of Tybee Island. So this I thought was an interesting picture of the Savannah restaurant that is from a transformed power plant that I wish I had known about. Keep going. There's another couple pictures. This is actually the museum inside where they actually have all these beautiful dinosaurs. And I'm like, this is a really odd combination. Well, maybe because it's fossil fuels, huh? But so it's a museum inside the hotel, which is where the power plant restaurant is. But they also have all these different exhibits, which again, I had never expected that to find that. Smokestack is yeah, it is a great name for a restaurant. Then the last picture I want to show is sort of, I think we have one more. Yeah, a house maybe. Anyway, Savannah is also a very old city, and I hadn't really, yeah, we should go, John. I hadn't really seen much of it before, but the thing about, you can take the picture off. The thing about Savannah that was really interesting to me is that they have beautiful squares. It's very European. There's parks and squares all downtown, and we could walk everywhere downtown. And the thing that was really remarkable to me is they had a statue in downtown Savannah of the Haitian soldiers who fought on the side of the revolutionaries during the American Revolution. And I thought, I have never heard that story. Wow. So Savannah's a very walkable city. It has beautiful plantations around the edges, but the downtown is wonderful too. And I just enjoyed kind of experiencing the charm of the Old South, and understanding better our history and finding out little things we weren't taught in his school. Like the Haitians actually, the Haitians immigrants fought for us in the Revolutionary War. Who knew? I'm Dr. Katherine Johnson, your host. I hope you've enjoyed the show. I Saw the Light, and I will be back next week with another fun show. You've been watching the KJ Show with me, Dr. Katherine Johnson, on my new KJ channel. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great week.
This has been The KJ Show. Tune in next week as Katherine shares her insights to current changes in the energy industry while drawing on her experience as an energy efficiency consultant for the past 30 years, right here on The KJ Show.